Wow.
Good morning. First Vice President of the PRI. So we're now going to hear from treasurer.
My name is Mike Pellicciati. I am treasurer of Washington. I love talking to all of you every year. This is always one of my favorite groups to be with. I see a lot of friends. Last time I was here with some folks from Federal Way. Anyone here from Federal Way? Right here. Jesse Johnson and I both represented Federal Way in the state legislature, and now Jesse and I both work in the office of the state treasurer. Work on a lot of things. I always talk a little bit about what the treasurer's office does, and then I want to talk about some of the things we're working on. And then really what I find to be helpful is open up for any questions that you have. That sounds pretty good. So treasurer's office, we serve a couple different functions. We invest some money, about $35 billion that we invest for the state and local governments. And then I also serve as the state's banker in terms of money in, money out, kind of write the checks to the state of Washington, do some other things. But we're dealing with a lot of things right now nationally. I don't think I need to tell anyone that. What I can tell you is one of the big focuses that I have, and I'm really pleased you're able to just hear from Attorney General Brown, is I've been talking about a triangle of leadership that we need in our state, which means the governor, the state treasurer, and the attorney general working together as a trio to respond and provide strength to defend ourselves from what's going on nationally right now. And, the biggest threat to us nationally is the fact of the federal government withholding or not sending money that they're legally obligated to send to the people of the state of Washington. And we have been preparing, and Jesse knows this, we've been preparing in our office literally for about 7 or 8 months for this situation. And I remember talking to folks in our team over those last several months saying, I hope this is the biggest waste of time we ever spend in our office preparing for anything. Because this is ridiculous. We shouldn't have to be preparing for this. But unfortunately, it was some of the best use of time that we could possibly have. So what happened is when the president unlawfully blocked money from coming to the state of Washington and federal grants to everyone, to every state, to every local government, we were ready to go.
Yes.
And so what we did is we had been partnering and ready to go so that we had essentially a lawsuit ready to go right away, partnering with Attorney General Brown, the good work he did, in bringing that lawsuit so that within 24 hours, a federal judge said no. The federal judge said you are violating the law and you have to do this. And we are going to be from this day on going to be continuing to be prepared for what's coming. Now, and I also want to be clear, for as much preparation and for the good work in that trio of leadership between Governor Ferguson, Attorney General Brown, and my office, I also can't sugarcoat, right? Things are challenging and things are going to continue to be challenging. But what I can tell you is we are going to take a firm position, as we have, that the president needs to follow the law.
Yes.
Right? And if we do that, the money that Congress has directed to be sent out will continue to flow. And if that happens, we are going to continue to make sure that we protect the financial interests of the people of the state of Washington and make sure that we're in a position so that we're able to continue operating and protect everything that makes being in Washington great. And what I will also say is for all those challenges, there is no state I would rather be in the United States than the state of Washington. But I will wrap up with with this, which is for all the stuff where it feels like we're on the defense. And guess what? We kind of are, right? I gotta be honest with you, right? We are. But part of preparation is making you feel better, because when things come at you, it's not a surprise, right? And so when we were hit with the federal withholding, or essentially the money was blocked, guess what? We have been talking to states all around the country, state treasurers in every state, Democratic state around the country, for them to prepare. So when this happened, we had lawsuits ready to go all over the place, and it didn't catch us flat-footed.
Yes.
We were prepared and in a position where we could step up and represent the interests and values of people in the state of Washington. But for all of the fact that we are on the defense, it doesn't mean we don't continue moving forward as a state. And so my office here in the Office of State Treasurer, through Jesse Johnson's good leadership in our office, is putting forward different initiatives here in Olympia right now to make sure we continue to move our state forward. Now I want to talk about 2 of them, and then I want to open up for any questions you have. Number 1 is something called baby bonds. Now, our office, and Jesse has been leading this effort, the idea of baby bonds, called the Washington Future Fund, is addressing the wealth gap that we have in our state. And saying, hey, for every child who's born pursuant to an Apple Health funded birth, which is 47% of the births in our state, we are asking the legislature to set aside $40,000 at birth to be invested, so that when that child is now a young adult, that money has grown to $15,000, $25,000, $30,000 waiting for them, to remove those financial barriers that often deny access to wealth creation and generational wealth. These funds will be in a position where it can be now directed by that individual to decide how they want to use it. Do they want to use it for educational or vocational opportunities, so they no longer are in a situation where they're denied access to vocational opportunities because they can't afford to do a free apprenticeship program, or take 3 months off with no pay to do a free apprenticeship program? Or it could be used for college attainment, or it could be used to start a small business, because what's the first thing someone with a great business idea has? They go to their bank and they say, hey, I got this business model, I got a pencil out, banks like that, and a great business plan. Where's your seed money? Where's your skin in the game, right? You're like, hey, I got a great business model. Like, hey, where's the seed money? Well, not everyone is like the president can get a small $1 million loan as he puts it from his dad, right? But what we should have is people that have the opportunity with good ideas to be able to be entrepreneurs and do the things that best serve their community, by allowing them to have that capital barrier, that financial barrier removed, because this money is available to be directed in that way. Or importantly, it can be used, this money could be used for property ownership. So that folks we can finally interrupt the cycle where folks are unable to own property and be denied the opportunity for generational wealth growth that comes to that. And through the baby bonds proposal that we put together, it would actually allow for, in all but 2 of our 39 counties, in all but 2 of our 39 counties in the state, if someone is FHA loan approved, the funds would be sufficient for someone to actually have a down payment for property, for a house. Because this is what happens when you start following the money. Right? When you have a position like state treasurer, and you're using the position in the best interest of the people of the community, you can still make things happen. This is responsible, this is long-term, this is how you invest. And guess what? This is what is already happening with people of wealth. Because the first thing that happens when a child is born, of children, of parents, and grandparents' needs, is they put money aside, they put the stock aside, they allow it to grow to meet those needs. Well, other parents no less loving, those other grandparents are no less loving, they would do it if they could. But this is an opportunity to make sure that everyone has access to generational wealth and the opportunity for wealth creation throughout one's life. So I talked about that. That is a proposal that's currently being heard in our legislature to develop a pilot project related to that this year. Like I said, feel free to talk to Jesse, who's leading this up in the office, if you have additional questions with that. I don't know if Jesse wants to say hi to everyone in case for those who don't know.
Oh, 6?
Yeah, and then so one other thing we're working on now, I want to open up for questions. I feel very strongly that everyone should have access to financial education in our schools today. It is beyond time where Washington State is now one of the minority of states that does not require financial education in our schools, and in doing so denies the opportunities for economic empowerment that comes from that education, that information. one should not be relying on whether their parents can understand the complexities of financial education today, on whether or not they know to sign this document or that document, or how this applies to them, or sign here and sign there, and things can have incredible impact throughout people's lives, very early in their lives, and they should have the tools necessary to be able to navigate that. And so we have a bill to finally require that financial education be taught in our schools today. It's been considered by the legislature, and Bill will share with your legislators your thoughts related to that. And with that, I point that out because even when we are facing the winds that are blowing at us, again, I can't sugarcoat it, right? I cannot sugarcoat it. We are dealing with some major things. But we can still keep moving forward despite the winds blowing at our face. And we are showing how to do that, and we're showing when we do this the right way, we can really move the entire state forward. So with that, I'm happy to open up for any questions.
I think you got one gentleman behind you. Go ahead.
I was wondering because a lot of people in high school and above are like getting ready to drive or like have been driving. So like as we know, like Washington has like one of the highest gas prices. So I was wondering like what initiatives were like being taken to like ensure equitable access to affordable fuel for everyone.
Great question. So those who didn't hear it, I want to repeat it in the back and say, hey, look, you got folks who are learning to drive and other folks, gas prices are expensive, and we have one of the highest gas taxes in the state. I don't think you mentioned that, that's true. And so it is kind of like, how do we make sure folks have equal access to the roads given the cost of fuel? I think it's a great question. I think one of the other aspects of it is you have a lot of folks who can afford more fuel-efficient vehicles. And in doing so, they're able to actually not be paying gas tax at all related to that. So, you know what? I think it's one of the biggest challenges the legislature is going to be facing. It's how do we keep paying for our roads when cars are getting more fuel efficient? And what that means is you're going to have some folks who also don't, are paying full tank on the gas and paying kind of full ride on that. I guess what I would say is it's a really good issue to bring up in the legislature, because that is an issue they're dealing with right now. There was a bill dropped just this week related to the future of gas tax and what that looks like. And I think talking about that issues of equity around that is going to be really important, because I'm not doing that a lot in the legislature. They're looking at just how do we kind of balance this out and make it potential out in the next 5 or 10 years, and I think that's a really important issue to raise. Thank you. That's a great question. All right, so the question up front, for those of you here in the back, was, hey, how does everything happening federally affect Washington's budget? Which is like the best question you can have, because that is literally like the main thing we're working on right now. It doesn't help, right? It does not help. It is about as challenging as you could possibly have right now, because at a time when we should be navigating, the legislature should be navigating some of the budget challenges that exist on how to plan things out going forward. We're in a situation where when those federal dollars were withheld, that is equivalent to $2 billion a month of money going to the state treasury that was blocked. That was lawfully directed by Congress. So we're not talking about federal dollars for Social Security, or federal dollars for the military, or federal dollars for some federal Hanford facility for nuclear waste. We're talking money directly into the state treasury. And here's why it matters, and that's why it's such an important question. We get $27.4 billion a year from the federal government and state treasury. Guess where the majority of that money goes? Healthcare, Medicaid, Apple Health. It's the federal match to Apple Health. Washington State has one of the most expanded Apple Health or Medicaid-funded healthcare systems in the country. And guess what? When that federal money doesn't come in, there's going to be a real pressure on the legislature on how to handle it. There's not enough money, I can tell you. There's not enough state money to take the place of those federal dollars. So that's going to put a squeeze on those federal dollars that are then, or the state dollars that are able to provide health care. And so I want to raise this issue now because it's such an important issue. This is when I say we can't sugarcoat it. There are challenges ahead, but we need to be talking about this now, and we need to be caring about it. It's not something we want to just be surprised about when it comes. And I think that's the biggest challenge is how to affect health systems.
Secretary Treasurer, I was really concerned about the news articles of shrinking the AG's budget this year. Where's your office now in that positioning, given all that the AG's office needs to do?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, hey, there was some some coverage on funding for the AG's office. You know, I'm sorry, the Attorney, good question, the Attorney General, right? So we just heard Attorney General Brown, right? He represents the Attorney General's office. Let me say this, when I talk about the trio of leadership, right, that triangle of leadership in our state between the governor, the Attorney General, and the state treasurer, you know what the three of us have in common? All three of us have worked in the Attorney General's office. Right, I was an Assistant Attorney General for years. Obviously, Bob Ferguson, our governor, was the Attorney General, and Nick Brown is the Attorney General. So I don't think there are three people who care more about the Attorney General's office than the three of us, because we know the importance that it can do. What I can also say is, Governor Ferguson has been very clear, as it's been related to that there are budget cuts across the board. Right? In our office, we're doing a 6% budget cut that we're applying. I have heard Governor Ferguson say specifically he would never do any cut. I mean, truly, nobody loves the AG's office more than Bob Ferguson, our former Attorney General. He would not do any budget cut that would impact the work of that office. And I take him at his word on that. And, you know, I don't represent the Attorney General's office now, but I also know how the funding works. It's not my determination. The legislature ultimately makes a determination as to the distribution of funds. They control the purse in the same way Congress does. It's not my job in the executive branch to not cut the checks. In the same way, it's not the job of the president and his U.S. Treasury to not cut those checks. Right? It's up to the legislature in our state, it's up to Congress nationally. But what I would say is, I am confident that Attorney General Brown would not allow it to impact the services being provided. And I'm absolutely confident Governor Ferguson, who loves the AG office, would do anything that would impact the delivery services, because that's the power. When I talk about the trio of leadership, that's the power to push back. I am confident Governor Ferguson's not going to do anything to kneecap that in any way.
I have a question. I was very interested about the vapor bonds that you were speaking about earlier, and I was more interested on how you guys do fund that, and then how will that be sustainable? So, like, I know 4,000 for every baby that's being born. I know you guys have done the research. That's like a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, how are you going to sustain that, and like, how long will this project be going on for?
Yeah, great question. So the question, if those who didn't hear it, was, hey, baby bonds, she likes the idea. It's generating a lot of money for folks. How does that work, and how is that sustainable, right? All good questions. We spent a year, Jesse led this effort, of having essentially Washington Future Fund Committee of Baby Bonds committed to hash out all those issues. What we're asking is that the legislature set aside $4,000 for every newborn that is born. So this is what happens when time is on your side. You set that aside, and that money gets invested.